Welcome, everyone, to the Pick Six podcast, where we discuss all the best stories in college football. I'm your host, Chris Chang, and joining me, as always, is my guy, Rudy Tamarchio. Rudy, I would ask you how you're doing, but something tells me you're doing pretty good.
I mean, our voices are a little deeper, but is this what it feels like to go through a game and not worry about like every single play? Is this what it's like to play a cupcake mid-season? Because it feels kind of good.
It felt great. So let's get into it. Thank you everyone for joining us for our weekly recap. We will be discussing the FSU UM game that took place this past weekend, where UM ran all over FSU, beating them 36-14. Rudy, where do you want to start with this game? The good, the bad, the ugly? You tell me. Where are we going with this?
Uh, I'll start with the good because
Let's
the whole
go.
idea about playing a cupcake, mid-season, Miami didn't have to open up its playbook. Miami almost went like full Paul Johnson and said, "We're going to run the same 5 plays and try and stop it." And
Yeah.
it's again, you don't have to worrying about the defense either because without like the exception of a fluke play, Miami's only allowing 7 points in that game, and that would have been in garbage time.
Yeah. Let's I'm going to give I will say, to me, my friend Bart put it best. It was a gloriously boring game. I was expecting more fireworks. We obviously discussed in our preview for the game. I thought it would be a much higher scoring game. So I will approach it from this aspect. I thought it was going to I thought we played a little down to our competition. I expected more. I'm happy with the result. Thought the result was great. Cuz you beating your in-state rival by 3 scores, 3 possessions is always a good thing. But the game left me wanting more. And so we can get into that as we do. But what were some of the good things that you really took from this game? I mean, granted, again, we both knew FSU was going to lose. We knew UM would control this game. We did. It was a very not for a second, even when we were entering halftime, where it was only about a possession and a half down. I never felt worried at all. But what were some of the good things you took from this game?
It just shows you that this team can win in a number of different ways. It shows you that against lesser competition in this case, but Miami can run the ball. They can be physical. They could play ball control offense. They only had 4 possessions that first half, so they scored on 3 of them. They punted on one when they just weren't really reading the blitzes that well from Florida State. But I mean, when you leave with pretty balanced offense, yeah, Cam didn't throw for 305 touchdowns, but they threw for 240 plus. They ran for 240 plus. And if it wasn't for like, negative 20 yards on the second possession of the game, Miami runs for like over 250.
Yeah, Cam Ward was 22 for 35 with 208 yards. And that was basically the base of his stats. No interceptions, no touchdowns. It was a really weird game to me, because if I was to tell you, what if I told you on Friday, the only person, it's going to be a 36-14 game, and the only person to throw a touchdown is going to be our tight end? Not FSU's quarterbacks, neither the two who played, not our Heisman hopeful of a quarterback, but the actual tight end, who was lefty, by the way, which I thought was kind of interesting.
Very interesting. I mean, what it would tell me is they just wanted to run a trick play at the end of the game. I was happy enough to be on the sideline at that point because all of the former Sebastians were all there in that corner of the end zone. And we all saw it coming. Like as soon as the first pitch happened, we saw Cam start rolling out and going, are they going to run the Philly special on Florida State? Lo and behold, it's the Philly special. And I think there's a rule where if you run the Philly special, it always works. Like what, 60% of the time, it works every time.
It's like Sex Panther. Yeah, 60% of the time it works all the time. Reeks like gasoline,
Exactly.
stings the nostrils. Stung that FSU defense, I'll tell you that. I thought another great thing was just, I mean, what's funny about the Philly special too was I forgot who I was watching. They were like, "Don't be surprised if UM runs a Philly special," and I was like, how would he know that? And then, like, I'm watching it, like, the play develop, and I'm like, "Oh, this is it. This is where it's happening." And sure enough, Cam gets that touchdown. I thought it was a very weird game also, in the sense that, again, it didn't seem like Miami was that dominant, but we were, because the run game was just so powerful. I mean, I can't honestly remember a time in the last 20 years where Miami's run game was that dominant, where it wasn't like we were waiting for the O-line to open up holes. It was almost as if we knew it was going to be a ground and pound, we were going to get at least 4 to 5 yards every carry. And it almost felt like that.
Yeah, and that's the nice part too about going for it on fourth down. What Miami did a couple times in that game when it was still kind of close, like in the first half, for Miami to go up and get that field goal, it was it was no brainer because you had the 2 minute timeout. They come out, and even though it's like not the most advantageous part of the field to go for it on fourth down, we're all thinking, well, you don't want to give FSU any hope because they had that one fluke play where they had
Yeah.
him stopped on fourth and short, and this kind of carried the quarterback, and then breaking free. Miami goes for it on fourth down from like 3, 4 yards out, easily chops up 4 yards and leads to a field goal. So yeah, it's nice to see. And it's one of those where if you look at this score and you go back like 20 years in time, this is lo and behold, this is by all means a blowout. But
Yeah.
in
Oh,
this day of
absolutely.
college football, it doesn't look quite as much, but it was a dominating performance, which is all that really matters.
Yeah, I mean the rushing game was averaging 5.8 yards a carry, which I mean is stellar. We ran for 230 yards and 3 touchdowns, which again, just domination, which again we were expecting. I had zero doubt. I actually thought that the running game did better than what I was expecting because I was really expecting FSU's front seven to really put up a fight. I think they did at certain times with certain things, specifically our passing game, which we'll get into in some of the critiques of the game. But in terms of the rushing game, I thought we played as best as we could. I didn't see I saw very little room for improvement. Even like when I think we would want to like bounce to the outside, there was no need to. The when we were running up the middle, there were so many holes, and there was such a parting of the sea that I was just like, hey, this is working. If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yeah, it's like this what's the way I'm looking for? Like instead of like a witch's brew, it's like this cocktail of just awful play all around from Florida State's defense because that defensive line was so highly regarded going into the year. They're not playing up to their expectations. They're playing undisciplined at the same time. So the gap
Yeah.
integrity is awful. So it's like there's always one gap that's open. The A gap should never be open. It was open a
Oh,
lot
a lot.
on Saturday.
Yeah.
So why not? Like it goes back to one of those things where it's working, do it. And actually, it's kind of funny because if you look back at the press conferences last week with like Shannon Dawson leading into this game,
Yeah.
he kind of dropped a little bit of a nugget in there by saying, Cam doesn't care if we throw for 304 and like getting 4 touchdowns a game. Sometimes he'll come back to the sideline after a timeout or during a timeout and say, "Look, we're running it down their throats. Let's keep doing it."
Right.
I can only imagine the conversations Cam had in that game saying, if I'm happy just handing it off, that's great. You just showed everybody that you can win another way without Cam having to carry you.
Yeah, one of the things I'm glad about us doing it today, as opposed to like an immediate reaction on Sunday morning or Sunday night, is this gave me some time to watch it. I got to watch the game over again. Then I watched the highlights and the condensed version just because I really wanted to get like an all around view. Because I won't lie, coming out of the game, I was really disappointed. Really, really, really disappointed. Not just because like I'm like, oh, like I want my team to put up video game numbers, but I take a very Nick Saban approach where like Nick Saban will be up by like 45 points in the fourth quarter. And if there's a little bit of undiscipline, he's chewing guys' asses out. That's just who he is. And I kind of take that mentality because that's where I see UM going. I'm not saying we're going to be in Alabama, we're going to build a dynasty, but if you want to play with the big boys and you want to be in the upper echelon of college football, you need to play mistake free football. And when you're playing a rival, specifically a rival who's having a really, really bad year, there should be utter domination. I mean, and there was. Don't get me wrong. So like, I'm gonna try and give you good with bad. But for example, like UM had 9 possessions. We scored on 7 of 9. Technically, it was 7 out of 8 because that last possession was just us running out the clock for the last like 10, 15 seconds of the game. But we'll just
Yeah.
put 7 out of 8. But the problem is in that 7 out of 8, 3 were straight field goals. And to me, if you think about it, those dominant teams, they don't leave 3 points on the board. They give you the 7. And that's where I wanted to see our team. And so that's where the main critique I would say comes from. Like where I come from with the main critique is I just expected a little bit more. But all that said, as I got to watch the game over again, as I got to hear, Mario Cristobal talk about, the game in his post conference, um, and then you kind of figure out the nugget that, Mark Fletcher lost his dad earlier this week.
Yeah.
So our thoughts and condolences go out to his family. But it makes more sense why we grounded and pounded it. There's no need to do high flying and crazy plays during this part of the season. We're 7-0. We're about to be 8-0. Let's just secure the victory, secure the win, assert our dominance, and pound the ball. And then on top of that, allow Mark to have a game to where he can kind of showcase his talent, and honor his father, which he did. Mark Fletcher got that first touchdown, which I thought was a great tribute to his dad, and it was a great setting of the tone for the night. That first drive, I joked with someone I was sitting with, and I was like, "We're putting up 52." I was like, and if you think about it, you add three touchdowns to 36. I mean, there you go. There's your 57. So to me, and I think all things considered, we could have easily put up 57 points this game, and without even trying realistically. 'Cause like you said, we didn't really open our playbook at all. I felt like, but at no point, again, I think this is the first time in uh, that I can remember since 2001, 2002, where we went into this game and I did not sweat a single bullet. There was not. I mean, even when what's his name, Luke, what is his name, Cromenheck,
Oh,
uh,
Kromenhoff, yeah,
Yeah,
Kromenhoek, yeah.
like even when he bounced out for that massive run, that 42-yard run, I wasn't sweating it. I was like, okay, like it's a fluke draw, it's a fluke score. I mean, both their scores were really fluke scores. The second score being in garbage time.
Yeah.
It just to me, it was a great. I thought it was a good game, gloriously boring, as I'm gonna label it. But let's get into some of the things that you thought were concerning and that you want changed heading into Duke and the subsequent rest of the season.
Before going into that, the one thing I wanted to play on was you were mentioning about Mark Fletcher, and there was a really touching moment right before the game in pregame warmups. Gary Furman from Kane Sport, I think, got the footage of it, but I was just watching. I didn't get close enough with my phone. But Mark Fletcher Jr., the running back on the team number 4, was playing with a couple of the kids in the stands. They came like right to like the first row of the stadium seats, and they're just tossing the ball back and forth. And it was just like the most relaxed and happy that Mark looked. And it was just like a really touching moment to see that even while going through so much like inner strife and heartbreak and
Yeah,
dealing with the loss of his dad, that to still take time and do that and bond with the fans was really commendable.
yeah,
So, great game for him. And also, our deepest condolence, our sincerest condolences to Mark Fletcher
absolutely.
Sr.
I mean, to lose your dad at
Um,
that age, I mean, it takes a
yeah.
lot of grit to get back on the field, have the performance he had. I mean, Mark Fletcher was 15 for 71, averaged 4.7 yards, got a touchdown. What more could you ask from a guy? I mean,
Yeah.
I can't think of it. I mean, that those are great stats for anyone on a normal Saturday, let alone a Saturday where you're grieving the loss of your father. But you were going to say, Rudy?
Yeah, so things to improve on, look at moving forward against Duke. Some of the similar, I mean, you look at enough teams now because we're 8 games into the season and we kind of see where Miami's offense does struggle. It's going to be on late defensive line shifts.
Yeah.
And that usually just causes some sort of confusion in terms of identifying what the pass rush is going to be and what the protection should look like. So they did a great job of adjusting to that later in the game. It's just one of those things where the awareness factor could probably be there in the moment by now.
Hmm.
So when you're getting ready to snap like the snap count, you see the late shift, always have like a hard count ready to go first thing.
Yeah.
You were mentioning about running the ball and not using many plays. I think what was really funny is that if you look at the first drive for Miami, where this went down and scored in like 2 minutes and 30 seconds, just throw,
Yeah.
quick throws to the outside.
They were
Sam
great.
Brown is making guys miss everywhere. You can win that way, and you could put up 52 points, but then to slow it down and start running the ball, I think it was interesting because you watched FSU's defense. They were playing with like 2 high safeties that entire game, and they
Yeah.
just continuously did it. So taking what the defense gives you, yeah. I think in terms of things that also need to be fixed, though, let's just go back to the defense real quick because this was a great game for them. But let's just say keep it up, keep it up, and also keep communicating in the secondary because there was a point in that second half where Florida State did have a guy wide open. And when I say wide open, there wasn't somebody within like
Yeah.
50
Are you
yards of him on
talking
the
about the
field.
Kentron Portier on the opening drive of the second half?
No, this was like fourth quarter where they were going out on fourth down like
Oh,
every single time. And the
yeah.
progression for the quarterback just took him to the right. So he threw this ball like over towards the sideline.
Yes.
On our side of the field on the there was I forget the receiver's name, but number 1 for Florida State,
That's who I was. Yeah.
untouched a lot.
Kentron Port. His name's Kentron
Yeah.
Portier. Um,
Okay. Yeah.
that it's funny. That's funny you mentioned that because I had it at another play. It was the opening drive. It was actually towards where you were sitting. It was almost basically right in front of you.
Yeah.
And he had thrown it to the left side of the field. And, he didn't throw it to the right side. He threw it to the right. But Kentron Portier was wide open by himself.
Yeah.
I mean, there wasn't we didn't have a safety, anyone on him. And I thought to myself, it wasn't the first time I'd seen him open like that. And I was like, I think we're still dealing with some of these secondary issues. We're just not seeing it because FSU is so bad. But I will say this before we keep dogging FSU, I do want to say this. I think FSU played the best game they could play. Realistically, their secondary had locked down a lot of our wide receivers, which is why we relied on the run game a lot. Our wide receivers really, really struggled to get separation from their secondary, which I thought was. I even texted you during the game. I'm like, what's happening with our wide receivers in the secondary? Like, I didn't think they were that good. But on top of that, I thought it was a very knockdown, drag out fight. I mean, FSU. I mean, while they couldn't convert on third, which forced them to go on fourth. I mean, it didn't matter to them. They were like, we're going to go on every fourth down we can because this
Yeah.
is this is a must win game for us. And so I commend them for holding us to 36 and keeping Cam Moore. I mean, besides himself, but keeping him from throwing a touchdown. I thought they played the best game they could, and they played literally. I mean, in our preview, I'd mentioned waggles and plays to the outside, and they utilized that, and it worked. It was semi effective for them because they got some decent yardage. I mean, their offense is absolutely inept, but they played the best game they could. I mean, if you told me it was going to be 36-14, I would be like, wow, FSU played a good game. You know what I mean? The fact that they scored even two touchdowns, I mean, that they can barely get 21 points, so 14 is two-thirds way there.
It
Um,
makes me wonder offensively with Florida State just how much of their ineptitude is also bad play design because we're probably talking about the same play. My timing might be off because I was down on the field for the entire fourth quarter and I saw that from the stand, so I was definitely in the third. So we're probably talking about the same one,
right.
and I'm wondering in that play it's probably quarterback progression. Like I'm looking at this and going, well, his first read is to the right of the field, the pressure gets there, and that's probably what immediately takes out the wide open player. And then
Yeah.
if you look at those other plays in this Florida State drive where they're putting a guy into motion, like a tight end or something like that, and they're trying to
Yeah.
run the same things that we do, where you put like you swing the tight end over, then you have him run back out. They had it so poorly timed that the pass rush just takes out the receiver before he even gets a chance to head back open and go into open space.
Yeah.
So for me, it's a matter of yeah, there's obviously some greenness from these true freshmen, redshirt freshman quarterbacks that are playing, but also they just can't execute at a remotely high level at all. Because I mean, when you can go through in this day and age in college football, and the most points you scored is 21, and you did it in a loss to
Yeah.
SMU, that's that's saying something. There's only one team in all of FBS that hasn't scored more than 21 points, and it's Florida State.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at just like the team stats, I mean, UM had 445 yards. FSU only had 248, so we basically doubled their yards. We had
Yeah.
31 first downs. They only had 14 first downs. The time of possession, we had 35 and a half minutes. They only had it for 24 minutes. Like it clearly, I mean, there was never a chance for FSU to be in this. But like you said, I also felt that with that one play, it's really more, I think, FSU's issue with their O line. I think their O line is just so horrifically bad that what are you expecting? I mean, you can't expect anything from Luke or Glenn whatsoever just because, like, how do you run an offense without an O line? Realistically, how do you do it? Because there was a point where we switched, I think it was either halfway through the third or just in the fourth, where we were only pressuring with three. We just said,
Yeah.
we're only gonna send three now. No need.
And we were getting home with three
Yeah,
too.
and we were, and it was wild, and I was just like, "Wow, we've gotten to the point where we're like, no need to send four, we'll just send three." And I'm not sure if again
Exactly.
that was like we're trying to like save some legs and like rest some legs for this week, but I was really surprised with that. I thought the defense had some decent pressure. I kind of wish there was a little bit more pressure again, just because of how bad the FSU O line is. I thought we would get a couple more sacks. I think we only averaged, and we
I think we
had
got 3. I think we got
three.
out-sacked 4-3. Yeah.
Yeah. And so to me, it was, I mean, again, when you look at the game, the stats, as Josh Pay would say, there's a lot of paper popping stats that go out there, whether it's, third down efficiency, fourth down efficiency. There's just so many different things where you could I legit feel bad. It's like your little brother. And I feel like that's kind of how Mario approached it, where he was like, this is my little brother. I can't beat up on them that bad. Like I could hang up. I mean, because we could have. I mean, we went for two that in the fourth quarter, which I just thought the going for the 2 point conversion to me in the fourth quarter, I was like, I think that's just for the fans. I don't think that had anything other than to do because I think he kind of read the room or read the stadium and was like, okay, they really want us to run this up more, and we could have. I think we easily, if we played a little bit tighter. I mean, Cam Ward, I didn't get to see this, but I saw it on the replay. Cam Ward was slamming his iPad after that third field goal because I get it, like we should be scoring. But again, I think it's another great win. Probably not one for the storybooks. Probably not one we'll talk about in a few years. But it is great to see um, us break that streak of 3 years. I think it's great for recruiting. Um, did you see what Mario said at the end of his presser?
I loved it, and the way that the Miami Hurricanes social media person put in this, like, really unhinged, like, montage of a random, like, group of, like, random clips from the course of the season to go with the pounding of the fist on the, podium, just chef's kiss stuff, and, yeah, look, this is what recruiting is, and when
Yeah.
you say it the way that it does, hey, stop them. Stop him. If you don't want him to say that, then you have to go up and beat him.
Yeah.
And I think he also didn't really like, people are going to say, "Oh, that's grandstanding, trying to appease the recruits," but at the same time, it's telling the truth.
No, I
Look,
don't think I
who
don't think it's grandstanding whatsoever. I think what he said is not only one of the most Miami things, but it's one of the like when you're an alpha like that, that's what you're gonna. He and I think he thought it. I think he did it in a very tasteful way. Basically, if
he
you
did.
didn't see it, guys, he basically just said, this game is showing you that where our program and the other programs in Florida are going, and he hits the desk and punches it and then walks out. And it was that was the point. It was like you can see where Billy Napier in Florida are going. You can see where Mike Norvell in Florida State are going, and we are going in the opposite direction. And we are in an upward trajectory, and they are in a downward spiral. And I mean, watching. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I'm a sucker for this. So I've been watching FSU podcasts for like the last 24 hours, and it's funny. Like you would think that it's like you would know your team by now. Like you have a really bad team. And that's not going to change. And you can't, and especially like when you know how bad your O line is, like
Yeah.
that's your roots. That's it. Like if you have really bad roots, your plant's not going to grow. And so to me, I'm watching these FSU podcasts and everyone's losing their mind. And I'm just like, you guys played well. You held Cam Ward to no touchdowns. You kept us below 40 points. You know what I mean? Like that we barely covered the spread. You guys got 2 scores. Like what else could you have possibly? I mean, if the
Yeah, you're
derang
1-8.
yeah, like
You're
what the
1-8.
if you really are that deranged where you thought you had a chance in this, like I have some used toilet paper I would love to sell you. Because
And to be honest, they could have very well been 0-9.
oh, ease. I'm telling you, I tell people this all the time. I'm like, FSU should have never won that Cal game. Like statistically, and if you watch the game,
Yeah.
like Cal gave them the game. It was like a mercy
Yeah.
win. Like they were just like, we know how terrible you guys are, and you're gonna play the rest of the season and get murdered for the rest of the season, except for maybe what are they playing Charleston Southern or I don't know who
Yeah,
they're
right
playing.
before Florida. So one of those
Yeah,
kind of teams, like a New
yeah,
Jersey school for the blind kind of team. Yeah, exactly.
yeah. Sister of a Worthless Miracle University. It's just like I don't know. Like it's like it's sad, but like those will be the only 2 wins I realistically think. I think
Yeah.
UNC is they're playing for bowl eligibility, so they're not gonna like just take FSU lightly. And then they've got Florida, and then they've got one more. Who was the other team they have? I want to know who else. Poor Florida State. My God, these poor kids.
Before, I mean, the
Yeah,
only thing I know is that Mac
yeah.
Brown is
North.
gonna be
Oh,
out for
Notre
blood.
Dame, who just literally hung
Who
up 51 on Navy.
Yeah, we got that one wrong.
Yeah,
I will say mea culpa. I expected something totally different, and
everyone
hey,
did. A
yeah,
lot of people, a lot of people, I think, didn't see what Notre Dame was going to do. And realistically, like I had to go back and watch that Navy game, the highlights of that Navy game, because like I was like, how do you give up 6 turnovers as an option team, as a running team? I'm
yeah,
like,
they throw more now.
yeah.
They
So
throw more now, and also they didn't pull an SMU who beat Duke by committing 6 turnovers themselves.
yeah. So I mean, Florida State. God bless them, but I genuinely feel bad for that program because Mike Norvell does not recruit well. He has no one on
No,
his staff that recruits well. And the transfer who's going to want to go to that school even if they're able to lure, and they're not only that, but their collective is horrific too. Like they can't
Yeah.
they can't gather money if they were peddling on the streets. Like it's terrible. And it's like it's great for us. I love it. There's nothing I love more to see, the Knowles down, but like this down, I'm like, oh, and like it was this weekend was a great like reminder of like where we are as a team, and it made me feel really, which is why again I'm happy with the win. Thought it was a great win. I thought we were very dominant. I was a little upset. Another thing that I kind of wanted to touch upon too. I'm not sure if you noticed. It seemed we got a little undisciplined in the second half. There were some costly penalties that we
Yeah.
had. There was some messiness that we had. It seemed like the offense came out a little flat in the second half, even though when you watch the highlight video that UM puts out every week after Cam Ward gave a halftime speech, I didn't see them that inspired that second half. And so it's going to be interesting to see how we approach Duke going into this next week, because we've beaten our rivals, we've gotten a good portion of the season under our belts, and the rest of the schedule is very manageable. Like I think we have the highest probabilities of making it to the CFP, and if not making it to Charlotte. So we're
Yeah.
gonna see how that goes. Um, did you see that we were ranked number 5? Did you see
I
that, Rudy?
did.
What are
I
your
did, and that I mean, it's great. I'll take it. I don't mind there being one loss team still in front. I don't mind that, Texas is now below Miami, which is great.
Yeah,
They're in the right place, and this is the last AP poll before the college football playoff rankings come out next week.
yeah, and I think
So, it- yeah, beat Duke and keep going.
yeah, and I think the Penn State Ohio State will work its way out. So we'll be in the top 4 by the end of this weekend. Um,
By the way, how about Ohio State this weekend? Did it look special to you? It didn't look special to me.
No, and I think a lot of that has to do with the drubbing and not the drubbing, but the loss they had in Autzen, losing to Oregon, having that week off. I think the stank was still there, and then they were able to shake it off and get that win. But yeah, it's interesting. We getting into November is always an interesting time, because some teams will experience their first loss like an Ohio State, like a Texas late. And then on top of that, again, we were talking about it last week, you have injuries and you have people who are playing hurt. And again, this isn't 15 years ago where you could be in Alabama or Clemson and have, 3 or 4 players deep where you can go. Like you go down a player, or you have a player who's not playing as to the best that he can play. That's it. That's your game. You know what I mean? Like there's no one else coming. And so I think we saw that with Ohio State. I think that it was just a matter of they didn't have that much left, and it was again a rough kind of the brushing off of the rust from the bye week they had, and then the loss to Oregon. But we'll see how they do up in Happy Valley this week. That'll be an interesting game. Anything else, Rudy, from this chapter? It's kind of weird. Like I was expecting again more, but I'm also like, okay, let's keep it moving. Like I'm ready for Duke. I'm ready to keep this season moving. Um, what happened is what happened, and it was kind of what I expected, a little bit more. But what about you?
Yeah, a win is a win at this point. I think it was a dominant win. It didn't reflect it in the scoreboard to be just how big of a blowout. We all wanted to see blood. We all wanted to see revenge. But if it means not opening up the playbook and showing some new wrinkles because they keep adding more complexity to the offense, that's great. I'll take it. You gave them nothing to look at. Duke's coming off of a really exhausting, dramatic win over SMU where they couldn't capitalize off of 6 turnovers. And by the way, I watched the replay of that game. Yeah, they forced 6 turnovers, but some of those fumbles, it's like when you put the old video game on like super easy mode, and if
Yep.
you just sneeze on a player that the ball just coughs out. That's what it felt like watching Jennings and that SMU quarterback when he was running a few times and going, did the turf send the ball loose? Like what happened
It's the
there?
little green people. It's the
So
little green people. You got to watch out for them, man. They're
yeah,
sneaky.
the little green man. And
The little
and the
green
other
men.
thing too, the other thing too about Duke that should be interesting is they do play great defense. They obviously run that Manny Diaz philosophy of just extremely aggressive, get up the field, try to blitz everybody and anybody at all times. But being Miami fans and being under Manny Diaz's defensive tutelage and also being a head coach for a little while, one thing we learned about that defense is when it runs against larger teams, it usually struggles. The
Yeah.
only exception I could think of was Notre Dame 2017, but
Well,
even then, we weren't really quite that outsized in persona in personnel.
that actually just reminded me of one other thing too that I kind of wanted to talk to you about. What was up with our O line? Because so last week our our pass blocking phenomenal. Our run blocking not so much against Louisville. This week our run blocking phenomenal. Pass blocking not so much. Not so
Now,
4 sacks. I was it kind of got me a little worried because I was like, is this something for other teams to be taking note of? Like, especially with I mean, we'll talk about it in our preview on Friday, but is this because Manny loves to blitz?
yep.
Manny loves to send the house and create tackles for loss and sacks. Are you worried? What do you think happened with our O line? Why did we go from one end of the spectrum one week to the other end of the spectrum this week?
I'm not too worried about it only because it happened early in the game and Miami definitely adjusted from there. Like I remember even part of why my voice is hoarse now is because at some point in the third quarter, I remember yelling like there's a number one safety also for Florida State, and he comes sneaking up on the edge. We're all yelling, number one's coming off the
Oh
edge,
yeah, I
safety
mean,
off the edge. And they adjusted because that was the slant to Horton for the first down, and they're just, kept going. So I think they make the adjustments. It's just the early kind of like feeling out of a defense, see what they're going to do. And again, it was a late shift by some of the defensive linemen. Looks like someone's going to come in and play man. They kind of turn around and face the quarterback last second. So it's a lot of like last second reads or last second adjustments that are happening, or people are also adjusting now where Cam's giving them the hard count, they'll like silent clap,
yeah,
and it looks like the defense is going to like say, "Oh, you caught us in a particular blitz package," and all they're doing is audibling themselves to say, "Okay, we're going to send pressure from this way now." So it's a little bit of a chess game, but I think they figured that out once they got a little bit of tendency from the that was the second drive of the game where they had like back to back sacks on second down and third down to force the punt. So I'm not worried about it too much because I think Miami is the larger, more physical team, should wear that defense down. And when you blitz a lot, guys are open and
that's
they
true.
usually miss tackles. So I think Cam will see it. I think they'll do a job of you can only disguise a blitz so many ways. So
That's
I think
true.
they've seen pretty much
And I
everything at this point.
And I also thought they did a great job at hindering Xavier Restrepo. Like
Strepo.
the fact that
Yeah.
like Restrepo wasn't as hot as he normally is, and he's been that way almost every single. What did Restrepo have? Restrepo was only 4 for 24.
Yeah.
You know what I
He
mean?
didn't have his first catch until like late in the second quarter.
Yeah, and it's been like that all 4 years. Restrepo just does not. They glue him down. Like they like nail him down every year, and I don't know what it is, and it actually kind of worries me a bit because I'm just like I'm wondering now if people just start going back into old FSU file video and they're just like whatever they did to X, we just need to do that because that is Cam Moore's favorite target. He is our X factor, pun intended. So there's some things that I think we definitely need to learn from, things we need to pick up. And correct because the inconsistency with the O line is starting to worry me as we get to the towards the end of the year. I think the secondary is the secondary. It is what it is. You know what I mean? Like you're not going to fix things now. It's a matter of just okay, how do we get past that? Is it just blitzing more and creating more pressure so that they do have to throw faster, or again, I'm not a coach. I don't get that's why I don't get paid the big bucks. But the Xavier Restrepo being hindered this week really, really kind of like had me a little nervous. And then again, just them holding Cam Ward to his lowest game, which again, still a great game. I mean, 22 for 35, 208. You can't be mad at that. You know what I mean? Um, but we will see with Duke. Anything else, Rudy, you want to talk about this game before we send it off?
Quick shout out to JoJo Trader. Had a great catch on third down, right along the sideline. That's a true freshman that's getting some playing time. Only up from here. So the more young guys that get in, the more diversity we have at receiver. So I'm super happy to see it.
Yeah, I think a lot of we had quite a few actually freshmen playing in this game, and I thought they all played really well for this rivalry game. You didn't see too many explosive plays or big plays, other than ones that were flukes. Like just like that's never going to be repeatable. You can't repeat that,
No.
But I'm really proud of the freshmen who did play, and so Rudy, It's another one in the books. We will see you guys on Friday for our preview of the Duke game and everything else that's happening around college football. I thank you guys for joining us and staying to the end. Remember to click subscribe and like the videos. It helps us out a lot. And we will see you guys on Friday. Be good, guys.